Alien SOS triggers. Humanity's most lethal fleet into motion. The Deep Space Monitoring Station, Hermes, drifted silently in the void between Jupiter and Saturn, its massive sensor arrays rotating slowly like the eyes of a sleeping giant. Inside the station's communications center, Lieutenant Sarah Chen sat at her console, watching streams of galactic static flow across her screens. The graveyard shift was usually peaceful, filled with nothing but the background hum of distant stars. A transmission cut through the cosmic noise like a knife through silk. Sarah leaned forward, her fingers dancing across the controls as the computer began processing the signal. It was faint, desperate, and definitely not human. The translation algorithms worked frantically as the message repeated in an endless loop. "Commander Torres to communications," Sarah called over the intercom, her voice tight with urgency. The response was immediate. Commander Maria Torres arrived within minutes, her boots echoing against the metal deck plating. She was a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, and Sarah had never seen her move with such purpose. "What have you got, Chen?" Torres asked, settling into the chair beside her communications officer. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she activated the translation output. "Ma'am, you need to hear this. It's not like anything we've encountered before." The translated voice filled the communications center, alien yet unmistakably intelligent. The tone carried desperation that transcended species boundaries. "This is Prime Scholar Zell of the Therian Collective. We broadcast this message to any who possess the technology to receive it. Our civilization faces extinction." The message continued, painting a picture of horror that made both humans fall silent. "The Ravager swarm has consumed 7 of our 12 worlds. 6 billion of our people have been devoured. We are not warriors, we are scholars, artists, and healers. Our remaining worlds have perhaps 10 cycles before the swarm reaches our core systems." 10 cycles, Torres muttered, running quick calculations. "That's roughly 2 weeks in standard time." The alien voice continued, each word heavy with the weight of impending doom. "We do not ask for armies or weapons. We ask only that someone somewhere remember that we existed, that we loved learning, creating, and exploring the mysteries of the universe." The transmission ended with coordinates to the Therian system, then began repeating from the beginning. Torres stared at the speakers, her mind racing. The Ravager swarm was a name whispered in terror across the galaxy, a species of biomechanical locusts that consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing but empty husks of worlds behind. "Send this to Fleet Command immediately," Torres ordered. "Priority Alpha protocols. And Chen, keep monitoring that signal. I want to know the moment anything changes." She paused at the door, looking back at the younger officer. 6 billion dead, and they're still asking us to remember them, not save them. What kind of species thinks like that? On Earth, Admiral Jackson Reeves received the transmission in his office overlooking the Pacific Fleet Yards. The grizzled veteran had seen humanity's first contact with alien life, the colonial wars, and the unification of the solar system. But this was different. This was a plea from beings who had already accepted their fate. Reeves activated his emergency protocols, and within an hour, Earth's top military commanders sat around the holographic display table. The Therian message played again, filling the room with the sound of a dying civilization's last hope. When it ended, the silence stretched for nearly a minute. "Recommendations?" Reeves asked simply. General Patricia Hayes, head of strategic operations, spoke first. "Admiral, our long-range scouts report the Ravager swarm as approximately 10,000 vessels strong. They strip mine planets for resources and biomass. We've never engaged them directly." "Because no one has ever survived an encounter with them," added Colonel Marcus Webb, head of Fleet Intelligence. "Every species that has tried to fight the swarm has been consumed. The Therians are just the latest in a long line of extinctions." Reeves stood and walked to the massive display showing the galactic map. A red zone marked the advancing swarm, with the Therian system flickering at its edge like a candle in the wind. "Gentlemen, ladies, I've spent 40 years preparing humanity for threats we couldn't imagine. Today we face one of those threats." "Sir," General Hayes said carefully, "the Therians aren't asking us to fight. They're asking us to remember them. Maybe we should focus on preserving their culture Rather than risking our entire fleet against impossible odds, Reeves turned back to face his officers, his eyes hard as steel. General, 6 billion sentient beings are about to be murdered by space locusts, and you want to write their obituary? That's not who we are. That's not what humanity means. The debate that followed was fierce but brief. Earth's military leaders understood the odds, but they also understood something else: humanity had clawed its way up from the caves and oceans of a death world, and they had never learned to abandon those who needed help. Full deployment, Reeves announced. Every available ship, every trained crew. The Therian system is 6 weeks away at maximum FTL. We have 4 weeks to prepare humanity's largest fleet for our greatest battle. Across human space, the mobilization began immediately. From the shipyards of Luna to the weapons factories of Mars, humanity's industrial might turned toward a single purpose. The heavy carriers of the Titan battle group prepared their fighter squadrons. The assault ships of the Wolf Pack loaded their marine contingents. The massive dreadnoughts of the Iron Wall checked their weapons systems one final time. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the hangar bay of her carrier Nemesis, watching her pilots perform final checks on their fighters. She had led the victory at the Proxima engagement, but this was different. This was humanity's first fight against a Galaxy-class threat. "How many fighters can we deploy?" she asked her flight commander, Major Tom Bradley. 80 in the first wave, Captain. Another 60 in reserve. The pilots are ready, but they're nervous. Fighting an enemy that's consumed entire star systems? It's not exactly standard training. Vasquez nodded, understanding their concerns. "Major, remind the pilots why we're here. 6 billion people are counting on us. Not humans, not allies, just people who need help. That's what we do. We help people." Meanwhile, on the stealth reconnaissance ship Shadow, Commander Lisa Park prepared for the most dangerous mission of her career. Her orders were simple but terrifying. Reach the Therian system ahead of the main fleet and gather intelligence on the Ravager swarm. "Commander," her tactical officer, Lieutenant David Kim, reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the Therian system. The swarm has arrived ahead of schedule." Park felt her blood turn cold. "How long do we have?" "At current consumption rates, maybe 6 days before they reach the core worlds," Kim replied grimly. Park stared at the tactical display, calculating risks and possibilities. "Signal Admiral Reeves. Tell him the timeline just got cut in half." The message reached the human fleet as they prepared to depart Earth's solar system. Reeves read the report twice, then addressed his entire fleet over the general communications channel. His voice carried the weight of humanity's resolve. "All ships, this is Fleet Command. Our mission parameters have changed. The Therian Collective has perhaps 6 days remaining before extinction. We will not arrive in time to save their worlds, but we will arrive in time to avenge them and ensure the Ravager swarm never threatens another civilization." The human fleet engaged their FTL drives together, 347 ships vanishing into hyperspace in the largest deployment in human history. Behind them, Earth continued its ancient rotation, but its children were carrying the fire of human determination toward the darkness between stars. In the Therian system, Prime Scholar Zell stood in the observation dome of the floating research station Harmony, watching the Ravager ships strip mine the third planet in their system. The once green world was now a gray husk, its surface torn apart by massive mining vessels that looked like mechanical spiders the size of cities. "Any response to our transmissions?" Zell asked her communications specialist, Scholar Finn. The younger Therian's normally blue skin had faded to a pale gray with stress. "Nothing, Prime Scholar. The signal has traveled far, but space is vast and empty." Zell nodded sadly. She had never expected rescue. The Therians were peaceful beings who had made few allies in their explorations of the galaxy. Most species were too busy with their own survival to help others. Still, she had hoped someone would at least acknowledge their existence before the end came. The research station shuddered as another Ravager vessel passed nearby, its biomechanical sensors scanning for any remaining resources. The swarm operated with terrifying efficiency, consuming everything organic and converting it into more ships, more weapons, more hunger. "Prime Scholar," Finn called out, excitement breaking through his despair. "I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures. Something big is coming. Zell rushed to the sensor station, her heart's pounding. On the display, dozens of energy signatures were materializing at the edge of their system. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like avenging angels, their dark hulls stark against the starfield. Admiral Reeves stood on the bridge of his flagship Retribution, watching the tactical display update with enemy positions. What he saw made his blood boil. 4 Therian worlds were already dead, their surfaces stripped bare and lifeless. The 5th planet was currently being consumed by the swarm, its cities visible as dying lights on the planet's surface. Thousands of Ravager vessels moved between the worlds like metallic locusts, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Sensors report approximately 12,000 enemy vessels, Admiral, reported Commander Sarah Mitchell, his tactical officer. They're organized in consumption clusters around each target world. The largest concentration is around the remaining inhabited planet. Reeves studied the enemy formation, noting the way the Ravager ships moved in perfect coordination. These weren't individual vessels, but components of a larger organism, a hive mind that had consumed its way across the galaxy for millions of years. "Signal the Therian research station," Reeves ordered. "Let them know the cavalry has arrived." The transmission reached Scholar Zell within minutes, and when the translation came through, she nearly collapsed with shock. "Therian vessel, this is Admiral Reeves of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your transmission and have come to assist. Please transmit the locations of any remaining population centers so we can prioritize our rescue operations." Zell stared at the communication display in disbelief. They came to help us?" she whispered. "But we're strangers to them. We have nothing to offer in return." Scholar Finn was equally stunned. "Prime Scholar, they traveled across the galaxy because we asked for help. What kind of species does that?" The answer came in the form of human actions rather than words. The Terran fleet split into attack formations with a precision that spoke of countless hours of training and preparation. The heavy dreadnoughts formed the center line, their massive weapons charging for long-range bombardment. Fast attack cruisers flanked the formation, ready to exploit any weakness in the swarm's defenses. Captain Vasquez launched her fighters from the Nemesis, watching as 80 small crafts streaked toward the enemy formation. The pilots faced odds of nearly 150 to 1, but their voices over the radio carried determination rather than fear. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Phoenix Leader," called Squadron Commander Jake Morrison. "Remember your training. Remember why we're here. Those bug ships might be big, but they've never fought anything from Earth before. Show them what humans can do." The first engagement began when human fighters encountered Ravager interceptors, biomechanical creatures that looked like flying razor blades. The alien craft were fast and numerous, but they had never faced opponents trained in the sky above a death world. Lieutenant Ashley Chen rolled her fighter beneath a Ravager interceptor, her weapon systems locking onto the creature's nerve center. "Fox 3, firing!" she called out as her missile streaked toward the target. The Ravager exploded in a burst of organic fluid and metal fragments. But for every Ravager destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The swarm fought with the relentless efficiency of a natural disaster, throwing waves of ships at the human formation without regard for losses. They had consumed entire civilizations through sheer numbers, and they expected to do the same to these newcomers. They were wrong. Admiral Reeves watched the battle unfold from his command center, coordinating his fleet with the calm precision of a chess master. "Dreadnought Group Alpha, target the large bioships around the 4th planet. Wolfpack, hit their flanks and withdraw. I want them confused and angry." The human dreadnoughts opened fire, their weapons designed to crack asteroids and shatter space stations. The massive energy beams struck the Ravager bioships, punching through their organic armor and causing internal explosions that rippled through their living hulls. The swarm's response was immediate and terrifying. Thousands of ships moved toward the human fleet like a living tide, their bioluminescent patterns flashing in what might have been rage or hunger. But the humans had fought in the asteroid fields of Sol, in the crushing depths of Europa's oceans, and in the radioactive storms of Mars. They knew how to fight as predators. Captain Marcus Torres, commanding the assault ship Berserker, led a boarding action against a massive Ravager bioship. His Marines moved through the alien vessel's organic corridors like wolves in a dark forest. Their weapons and tactics adapted for close-quarters combat in hostile environments. "The whole ship is alive," reported Sergeant Diana Ross over the radio. "Walls are trying to seal us in, and something's pumping toxic gas into the corridors." Torres smiled grimly. "Sergeant, we trained for this on Titan, where the air tries to kill you just by existing. Keep pushing forward." The boarding parties discovered something that changed the nature of the battle. The Ravager ships were filled with partially digested remains of previous civilizations. The swarm didn't just consume worlds. They absorbed the knowledge and memories of their victims, using them to become more efficient killers. "Admiral," Torres reported back to the flagship, "we found data cores from at least 20 different species. The swarm has been doing this for millions of years. They're not just predators, they're evolutionary parasites that steal the strengths of everyone they consume." Reeves absorbed this information, understanding its implications. The Ravager swarm had grown stronger with each civilization it devoured, incorporating their best technologies and tactics. But they had never encountered anything like humanity, a species that had learned to fight not just for survival, but for the survival of others. "All ships, execute Pattern Omega," Reeves commanded. "Time to show them what apex predators look like." Pattern Omega was humanity's most aggressive fleet tactic, developed during the War Games following the Mars Rebellion. It required perfect coordination and absolute trust between ship commanders. The human fleet exploded into motion, abandoning traditional formation, fighting for something that looked like chaos but was actually the most sophisticated military maneuver ever attempted. Ships wove between enemy formations, striking hard and fast before vanishing behind cover fire from their companions. The Ravager swarm had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Their hive mind was optimized for consuming stationary targets and overwhelming smaller fleets through numerical superiority. The humans fought like a single organism made up of independent predators, each ship capable of thinking and adapting while still working toward the common goal. Captain Vasquez coordinated her fighter squadrons with the fleet's movements, using her smaller craft to guide the larger ships to optimal attack positions. "Nemesis actual to Phoenix Leader, paint that bioship at coordinates 127.4. Iron Fist has a clear shot if you can keep its attention." The battle raged for hours, with neither side giving ground. The Ravager swarm threw everything they had at the human fleet bioships the size of asteroids, swarms of living missiles, and weapons that turned space itself into a hostile environment. But humanity had been forged in Earth's crucible of danger, and they refused to break. On the Therian research station, Scholar Zell watched the battle with growing amazement. "They're not just fighting for us," she told Finn. "They're fighting like we're their own people. I don't understand, why would they risk so much for strangers?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A human Marine, Corporal James Wright, had been assigned to evacuate the research station. As he helped load Therian civilians onto transport ships, Scholar Zell asked him the question directly. "Corporal Wright, why do your people fight so hard for us? We have nothing to offer you, no way to repay this sacrifice." Wright paused in his work, considering the question. Around them, the sounds of battle echoed through space, human voices coordinating attacks and rescue operations simultaneously. "Ma'am," Wright said finally, "on Earth we have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Your people called for help, and we answered. That's what good people do." He gestured toward the viewport where human ships were holding the line against impossible odds. "We don't do this for payment or gratitude. We do it because it's right." As the evacuation continued, the tide of battle began to turn. The Ravager swarm's numerical advantage was slowly being eroded by human tactics and determination. But victory came at a terrible cost. Dozens of human ships had been destroyed, thousands of crew members lost to the void. Admiral Reeves received damage reports from across his fleet, each one a reminder of the price of their intervention. The dreadnought Vengeance had sacrificed itself to cover the evacuation of a Therian colony ship. The cruiser Defiant had rammed a bioship 3 times its size to prevent it from reaching the rescue transports. Admiral, Commander Mitchell reported, "We've evacuated over 4 million Therian civilians. The remaining population centers are either consumed or cut off by swarm forces." Reeves stared at the tactical display, calculating odds and resources. They had saved millions, but millions more would be lost. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Therian Prime Council. They want to speak with you directly." Reeves nodded, accepting the call on his personal display. "Prime Scholar." Zell appeared on the screen, her alien features showing exhaustion and grief, but also something else, hope. "Admiral Reeves, I speak for all surviving Therians when I say that your people have given us the greatest gift possible, a future. We can never repay this debt." Reeves smiled sadly, thinking of the crews who wouldn't return home. "Scholar Zell, humanity doesn't fight for payment. We fight because the universe is too beautiful and too full of wonder to let creatures like the swarm destroy it. Your people represent knowledge, art, and peaceful exploration. That's worth fighting for." The final phase of the battle began when the Ravager swarm realized their prey was escaping. The remaining bioships converged on the human fleet in a desperate attempt to prevent the evacuation. But they had underestimated human resolve. "All ships covering formation around the transports," Reeves commanded. "No Ravager gets through. Hold the line until every civilian is clear." The human fleet formed a protective wall around the fleeing Therian ships, their weapons creating a barrier of fire and steel that nothing could penetrate. The last transport cleared the system just as the Ravager swarm launched their final assault. Thousands of bioships threw themselves at the human formation, accepting massive casualties to reach their escaping prey. But the humans held, their ships taking terrible damage while ensuring not a single civilian transport was lost. "All transports clear," Mitchell reported. "Recommend immediate withdrawal, Admiral." Reeves nodded, but his expression was grim. The swarm was wounded but not destroyed. They would heal, adapt, and continue their rampage across the galaxy. "Fleet-wide transmission," Reeves ordered. "All ships, mission accomplished. We've saved 4 million lives today, and we've sent a message to the galaxy: humanity stands with those who need protection. Prepare for hyperspace jump." As the human fleet prepared to depart, they left behind something unprecedented in galactic history: a Ravager swarm that had failed to completely consume its target. For the first time in millions of years, the biomechanical locusts had encountered predators capable of fighting them to a standstill. The Therian refugees, scattered across dozens of human transports, watched their home system disappear into hyperspace. Their worlds were gone, their civilization reduced to the few million survivors in the human fleet. But they were alive, and they carried with them the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy there were people willing to fight for strangers. On Earth, news of the battle spread across human space with the speed of quantum communications. The victory was celebrated, but the cost was mourned. 47 ships lost, over 8,000 human lives sacrificed to save a species most humans had never heard of. At the memorial service in Geneva, Admiral Reeves addressed the families of the fallen. "Your sons and daughters died as heroes, not just of humanity, but of all civilized life in the galaxy. They proved that Earth's children are willing to stand against the darkness, no matter the cost." The Therian refugees were settled on New Haven, a world in the outer colonies that had been terraformed but never fully populated. Scholar Zell stood in the new settlement's center, watching people begin the slow process of rebuilding their civilization under alien skies. "Prime Scholar," Finn approached, carrying a data pad filled with reports from their new world. "The humans have given us everything we need to restart our civilization. Agriculture, technology, even protection from their fleet. Why do they continue to help us?" Zell looked up at the unfamiliar constellations, thinking of the human ships that patrolled the system's borders. "Because they understand something we are only beginning to learn, Finn. Strength without compassion is just another form of the swarm, but strength used to protect others. That's what makes a civilization worth preserving." In the depths of space, the Ravager swarm continued its endless hunger, but something had changed. For the first time in their existence, They had encountered resistance that couldn't be overwhelmed or absorbed. The humans had fought not for conquest or resources, but for the simple principle that innocent people deserve protection. The galaxy would never be the same. Words spread from system to system about the species from the Death World soul. The predators who use their killing instincts to preserve life, rather than destroy it. When the next distress call echoed across the void, it would not go unanswered. Humanity had found its place in the cosmic community not as conquerors or traitors, but as guardians. The Death World had produced its ultimate export, hope for those who had none, and a promise that evil would not triumph while humans drew breath. The fleet returned to Earth, scarred but victorious, carrying with them the gratitude of an entire species and the knowledge that they had changed the galaxy forever. Admiral Reeves stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. "Sir," Commander Mitchell approached, holding a datapad. "Intelligence reports indicate at least 6 other species have been monitoring our communications about the Therian rescue. They're requesting contact with Earth government." Reeves smiled, understanding the implications. "Commander, I think we're about to get very busy. The galaxy just learned that someone is willing to answer distress calls." As the human fleet entered Earth's solar system, they were greeted by crowds of people who understood that their species had taken a crucial step toward its destiny. Humanity had announced itself to the universe not through conquest or threat, but through sacrifice and compassion. The Therians were safe, but their rescue was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, other species watched and wondered if these humans would answer their calls for help as well. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of people who needed protection. And humanity had proven that when good people called for help, the answer was always the same. "We're on our way." The stars held many threats, but they also held many wonders worth protecting. Earth's children had found their calling among the cosmos to be the guardians who stood between the darkness and the light, ensuring that no civilization would face extinction alone. The age of human expansion had begun, not through conquest, but through service. The Death World had produced its greatest export, heroes willing to cross the galaxy to answer a stranger's cry for help. And in a universe full of predators, that made all the difference.